back to another episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast, the podcast that is passing wisdom from generation to impact and transform the lives of athletes into young leaders. So, in our conversation today, we interview James McLand. James is the founder of Generation Youth and Generation Ziglar, and James, quite frankly, is literally bridging impact. So the mission of Generation Ziglar is to equip young leaders like myself who work with young leaders, youth, to go out and make a difference in the world. And in our conversation today, we talk so much about different team building activities, self-image, and the importance of that, and the ripple effect and impact that equipping one leader who equips another leader can really do for our society and the world. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Bridging Impact Podcast, James. I'm really excited to have our conversation today because both of our missions are very aligned in impacting the next generation of youth through leadership. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation, and I also appreciate you being a guest on our show as well. So it's nice to be able to meet people that you have such synergy with, that you can enjoy conversations.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, the synergy and being able to cross-pollinate and help support both of our missions. It's shout out to Tammy again for connecting us and really just, making that impact. So, right away, the first question we ask all of our guests is, what is your definition of impactful leadership?
I like to go back to John Maxwell's definition where he says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And if you look at that being a broader definition of leadership, you can see that leadership can be negative or positive. So impactful leadership is, I believe, when you're influencing people in a very positive and an effective way, that you're using your skills, your talents, your position, all those things that you've been blessed with, that you are using those to positively impact the people that you lead or the people that you come in contact with.
Yeah, no, 100%. We definitely share similar philosophies around that. And it really is all about using those leadership, traits and skills and knowing that leadership isn't always an authority position, and you can have a positive impact no matter what your role is on a team. And I'd love for you to share more about your story of how you came to that definition and share more with the audience around what is Generation Ziglar and what's the mission.
Well, I'll start with explain a little bit about what Generation Ziglar is and what our long-range goal is, what our plan is. I became a part of the Ziglar Corporation, which is based on Mr. Zig Ziglar, the late Mr. Zig Ziglar's philosophy and teaching. When Mr. Ziglar was alive, he spoke to over 250 million people in person, not through
That's wild.
virtual media. This was someone having to get in their vehicle, drive somewhere, buy a ticket, and go in and listen to him speak. So it was something, quite amazing, 250 million people during his lifetime. But he developed some very key philosophies on people's success, how they can be successful in life, how they can thrive. He believed that everybody was born to win, but they needed to understand how to take those kind of characteristics and accomplish those. And so I became a part of his organization in 2013. I did it with the entire purpose to take his message, repackage it, and present it to youth. Take a timeless message, repackage it into a timely production, to be able to give it to people in a way that young people can digest it and it's applicable to their lives. And so we created Generation Ziglar. We thought that was kind of a cute name, Generation Ziglar, because it dealt with Gen Z, which was the current youth generation that we were dealing with at the time. And so we really focused on taking that message, teaching it to a new generation of young people, and then equipping them with skills, Justin, so that they could go out and be the difference makers. They could make impactful leadership in their communities and in their circle of influence. As a result, we've got a lot of folks who have come through our programs that we've certified to teach content that we created based on Mr. Ziglar's philosophies, that have gone on to be public speakers, ministers, coaches, teachers, college professors, some attorneys are tossed in there as well. A lot of people doing a lot of different things. A lot of them were doing major things while they were in college. They were leaders of student organizations, some on a local level, state level, a few on a national basis. And we've had opportunities to train almost 200 young people before COVID came in and kind of corrected some things on us. So, we changed quite a bit about what was going on there.
No, that's beautiful. And I love the mission. And I'm really curious, what are some of these principles and common threads of, equipping these leaders like that are a part of, Generation Ziglar? You talked about everyone is born to win and repackaging that for youth. But I'm curious, as someone who is working with youth quite a bit, I'm always looking for different ideas on how to implement with youth and how to equip them with, different tools in their belt.
Well, Mr. Ziglar in the 60s developed his steps to success. And there were 6 steps that he felt like if you could master the concepts around those, you could thrive in life. And those 6 steps that he identified were self-image, building positive relationships, goal setting and achievement, attitude, work ethic, and oh my gosh, I forgot the last one. Grit. It's not grit, but it's something close to grit. I can't remember the last terminology you made. But here's the great thing. We wanted to make sure that what we were creating, the curriculum we were creating, was actually worth something. So we started interviewing youth, and we just asked them one question. Hey, what's the biggest problem facing your generation? And after we had about 2,500 interviews, some of them group interviews, some of them on the phone, some of them virtual, some of them in person, just a variety of different ways, we recorded their answers, and we came up with 3 major categories. And those 3 categories, we didn't push these answers into these categories. This is what they were. Number 1, category that you said they struggle with, self-image. The number 2 category they say they struggle with, building positive relationships. And the third one is having purpose in life and the ability to see that purpose through goal setting. So that is what you said. That's what Mr. Ziglar said over 50 years ago, almost 60 years ago. And so those 2 things meshed really, really well. We were able to take his content and build that and create that. So that's the issues that we deal with: self-image, relationships, and goals. That's what we go forward on. That's what we equip young people to do. That's what we equip adults who want to be life coaches for youth to do. That is our entire purpose, is focusing on those 3 issues and bringing it to youth.
I'd love to dive into the first one, because I know the self-image, because I know that's something that we've talked about quite a bit here in the last few weeks when we've been fortunate enough to, have these conversations. And obviously a big rise in social media since the pandemic has really affected it. I work with the athletes. I know they judge themselves based on the players that they see on Instagram, whether it be professional players. And even like last night, I was watching with some of my buddies, like Sierra Canyon is a high school here in Los Angeles, and it has LeBron James' son. A lot of famous kids go there, and just the unbelievable attention that they get. They have millions of followers on social media, and they're 15 years old. And just how that really like affects how we see ourselves based on, social media. So I know a lot of your programming helps, youth with that. I'm curious, what is your like first pieces of advice for life coaches and, sports coaches that work with youth and are trying to, affect a positive image for themselves?
Well, one of the first steps that we want to teach youth when we're working with them, and so the people that we work with, we equip them, we say, go here first, is helping young people identify what the issues are with self-image. Why is it even important to worry about this? Yeah. We don't just start giving them things to say, hey, you need to do this, this, and this to improve your self-image if they don't even think it's worth dealing with. So we first got to kind of, assess to them, say, hey, this is what this means. Is that important to you? And do you see some bad aspects of it? And so once they get to doing that, you start to reflect on it. They start to talk about it. They start to realize how negative things have affected their perception of who they are. And that's a really important first step, is helping them to understand that.
Yeah, the getting behind the why. I think that is a big. It's sometimes it's simple, right? We don't need to overcomplicate it and make it more complicated than it needs to be, right? And so,
Well,
I'm
it's the
curious.
same way with coaching athletes. Athletic
Right.
things. There's so many times, and you've seen this too. Coaches come in and they teach them the what. Hey, I want you. This is what I want you to do, and they never explain how it works and the why. So I coached
Right.
baseball for a number of years, and it's very easy to teach skills.
Yeah.
But the skills are not going to translate if they don't know why they have to do it that way. Why am I telling you to do it this way? Why am I telling you to be in this position? Stand this way, do that. Why is that important? And how does it fit to the total goal of making you a better player and us a better team? And it's the same concept when you're teaching life skills like self-image, relationships, and goals. Let's first identify why is this even important and why is it going to do? And then we can give them some tips about how to successfully, navigate this. This is very complicated. Everybody deals with self-image. I mean, good gracious, we can look in the Bible and see stories from thousands of years ago where the characters in the Old Testament struggled with self-image. Television shows from 40, 50, 60 years ago, even the first family sitcoms are the topics that the children in there, the Leave It to Beaver. Remember Leave It to Beaver, Alda? It's one of the oldest shows. If you look at that, you'll see those kids that are in there, the writers wrote that they were struggling with self-image. It is not new. It just manifests itself in different ways now.
Right. Yeah. There are different mediums now that we judge ourselves on. And I'm really curious because I think our self-images are, kind of really connected and interconnected to the second, principle that you all are teaching is about developing positive relationships, because something that I've been, kind of talking about the last few years is that relationship with self kind of comes first and really affects the relationships you have with others. So I'm curious, what is, kind of your philosophy on connecting, the self-image with helping youth develop positive relationships with their peers?
Well, I think there's so much synergy and they're so intertwined that you cannot really develop one effectively without working on the other one. Yeah. We cannot help a young person who's struggling with self-image if the relationships they have around them are very negative, that are pouring into them badly. Or if they, someone who has good relationship skills and really has positive friends can work through some of the problems that they deal with self-image. And someone who has a very positive self-image of themselves and feels good about who they are and understands their identity very well will most likely have good positive relationship skills. So they're so intertwined, you really can't work with one without the other. I mean, what was it? The teacher Jim Rome said you are the sum of the 5 people that you hang around with.
Right.
So if you're hanging around with 5 turkeys, you're going to be a turkey. And if you're hanging around with 5 eagles, most likely you're going to be an eagle. You may not be the big soaring eagle like some of these, but you're still going to be in that eagle category. And if you hang around with 5 turkeys, I don't care if you're the best turkey there, you're still a turkey. So, we got it. They're so intertwined. And you've seen this, Coach. You've seen, and you probably have heard this before. Young people say, well, who I hang out with does not really affect, me. I can hang out with who I want to. That's so naive. It does. It hangs out exactly with them.
Yeah, no, as I hear you talking, I feel like it affects young people more than even adults, because young people are still forming their identities. I'm thinking of a specific player that's on my team who he's a great guy on his own. But when he gets with some of his other buddies who are a little older than him, when you are a first year athlete, in high school, you are really, you want to be as cool as possible, right? And you're really trying to fit in and, again, just like feel like you belong. Because I feel like that's one of the other things that I recognize is a lot of, coaches nowadays are like, this generation this generation that. It's like, well, I wouldn't quite label it as, putting them off, writing them off as they're soft or, they care about certain things. It's like when we were kids, we just like wanted to belong, and we did different things, right? And we tried to fit in different ways. And so with social media, right? They want to be so cool, so bad, so they can get so many likes. It's challenging to be a youth right now.
Mm-hmm. When my son got to high school as a ninth grader, he was able to play on the varsity team on his baseball team, and I noticed immediately that the head coach of that team, Jacob came in. My son's name is Jacob. He came into the group, and he was young. He didn't know these guys. They were all juniors and seniors. I think there might have been one sophomore, but most of them were juniors and seniors. And, on a team of 16. So he didn't know these folks. He was the only freshman there on this team. There was just a lot of insecurity that he was going to have. And I immediately saw that the coach identified some key players that were seniors and one junior to not necessarily mentor him. That was not what they used. It was just to kind of keep them under their wing, to make sure he didn't hang out with the egomaniacs of the team, or the kids who were not give everything in practice, that he was going with the guys. And so it kind of formed his philosophy of how to play on that team because of who he was hanging around. And when he was struggling, which he would have struggled, being 14, facing 17 and 18-year-olds, when he struggled at bat some, those guys were able to build him up and encourage him. And if he made an error in the field, they were like, man, you're the only ninth grader in this whole league. You're so much ahead of everybody. They were there to support him. Right. And so that helped him with his image. If it had been the other guys, they might have said, you don't deserve to be on this team. You should be on the JV, or you're worthless on this. We'd be better off not having you as a that kind of concept.
Right.
Everything is so intertwined on that. And coaches, athletic coaches, can have such a significant impact on being able to guide them to form those positive relationships on those teams as teammates.
And I think you bring up a really important point for athletic coaches, is to not be the only person that's really trying to help, certain players feel comfortable in a system, because I feel like the best teams are player led, right? So are you having those one-on-one conversations with your leaders on that team who can help, that player, like your son, who's, newer onto the team, feel comfortable, right? You're not going to
because one day, Jacob was going to be the leader of that team. He was going to be the part of the senior, and if he'd have been plugged in the wrong part to begin with, and had started developing that negative mindset, that anti-growth mindset, and had started looking at himself in a poor way, by the time he was in leadership position on that team, he was going to be not useful at all for the coach to be able to mentor future folks. So the coach was very wise in doing that and picking the ones that could do that. I really appreciated what he did.
Yeah, it sounds like the coach was really intentional about that. And I'm kind of thinking, that's what Bridging Impact is all about, right? It's about connecting, the leaders and the wisdom, and continuing to hand that off, right? And it doesn't just have to be from coach to player. It can be player to player. And that's how to build and establish a positive culture where people can have positive relationships and thrive, right? Versus, I've, been a part, and I've seen teams, just kind of bicker and go at each other instead of, building and forming those positive relationships. And then, like you were talking about before, right? If you're, as an athletic team, if you're constantly bickering, you become, like you said, like turkeys together instead of eagles and helping each other up. You're bringing each other down.
Yeah, and you could say, "Hey, I'm good as an individual," but we're going to be so much better as a team, and we can do this together if we're working together in those types of positive relationships. And long term, the effect that it's going to have on a young person is going to far exceed just the athletic arena. I mean, because a positive self-image is going to help them with family relationships in the future, career relationships in the future, school, academics, everything is going to be affected by that. So it's such an important thing to have to worry with.
It is really important. I'm curious, do you have any exercises or activities that you could share with that, you run with some of your youth that help them explore some of the self-image?
Well, so, we do have a list of different types of things that youth can do to help work on their self-image. But two things that I would mention right now that I think they could do immediately is, number one, is to make a list of your assets, or make a list of what you feel like you're good at, everything that you're positive. If we're into athletes, it could be, I'm a good teammate. I can dribble well. I can shoot the ball well. I listen to the coach. All the different things you could, everything that you're good at. I'm good at math. And some kids are going to be listening to this and they're immediately going to think, Justin, I'm not good at anything. Coaches, y'all are crazy. I'm not good at anything. But if you're very intentional in going through this, you're going to come up with a list. No matter how small of an item it is, put it on that list. And then once you have that list and you're able to look at your list, you're able to see a list that you have, you're beginning to feel a little bit better about yourself. Hey, I'm not quite the loser that I think I am. Because look at all these things that I have here. That may be an exercise that an adult needs to be with them on, or at least an older person needs to be on to help guide them through it, to be able to say, have you thought about this? How are you good at that? Are you to help prod them along? So that's one thing. The other thing that I would recommend, and this again comes up with a list, is to make a victory list. What are all the things that you have done? And you can put a time limit on it. Hey, in the last 2 years, 3 years, whatever. What things have you done that have gone well for you? Well, I made the team. I made this shot. I developed good friendships here. I made an A in this class. I pulled up this grade from a D to a C. Any type of victory, write as many things down. Why that is so important? What's going to happen at that time where they do fail? And all those negative things are entering their mind. Now they have two lists to help keep them focused. One list is to say, I'm not as bad as I think I am. And two, they'll realize this one setback is not the end. Look at all these other things I've done well. Mr. Ziglar said that failure is an event. It's not a person. And having these two lists can help put that perspective for young people so they realize, I failed today, but it's an event. This is the person I am. I'm looking at it on the things that I've written. It's not that one event. I've seen a lot of boys when I've coached baseball over the years that missed a fly ball during a crucial game. My son missed a fly ball, 8th grade. I remember this extremely well. He missed a fly ball. He was playing left field, missed a fly ball that I thought was pretty easy to catch. And he just misplayed it, misjudged it. I don't know what happened. He misjudged it. And it caused one of their guys to score. And we got behind by 2. We were behind by 1. We got behind by 2. He came into the dugout, and immediately the coach of the middle school team went out there and said, hey, you've got this. I believe in you. He was already reinforcing, know what you can do. He was at the bat, got up. I don't know if it was anger. I don't know if it was whatever it was. He attacked that ball like I'd never seen him before, triple, and then scored on the next play and was able to get the whole ball around. We ended up winning the game because of that momentum. And I think a lot of it is because he had that tank, that resources already there where he had gone through the activities of, hey, what are the things that I do well? And what are the things that I have already had as a victory? That one mistake didn't set him back.
1,000%, yeah. And for the coaches that are listening, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that story because I've been around quite a bit of coaches recently, and I've been watching, like the frustration that a coach can bring and the athlete not rising to the occasion again, because there's a huge difference, right? If you miss a fly ball between you getting just chewed out, right? Why didn't you catch that fly ball? You should have got a better jump on that. You're letting your team down, right? They then, your son would go to bat deflated, right? And not having confidence and probably, either strike out, roll over, pop out, just because he didn't have that. But because he had a coach that believed in him and picked him up, all right, next play, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we're human. We're going to make mistakes. We're not robots. And I really like the idea of making like lists of your assets of what you're good at, and also a victory list, because I had the other day I asked in my practice, is the last practice before our break, I just asked them, like, what are you proud of? And I had one of our best players say, I'm not proud of anything, right? And so then I had other people in our circle share, like, okay, what are you proud of him for? And, we were able to kind of go around a little bit. It's not the most perfect with young teenage boys, so I'm just breaking it down, but just to get those ideas. And my hope is that he's like, maybe goes home and thinks, oh, I'm actually maybe a little proud of this, and it's hard because as coaches, sometimes we only focus on what we need to improve on. I'm really trying to help our young athletes see what they're doing well as well, because they do have a long way to go, right? But I do want them to see what they're doing well
one group activity
focus on those assets.
One group activity too that would you made me think of is a compliment sheet. So one of the activities that we teach is that you put a sheet of paper on the back of somebody, tape it to their back, and then give everybody a marker or something. Everybody has a sheet of paper on their back, and everybody has to go around and write something positive that they like about the person. So, you smile a lot, or and you have to give them a little bit of instructions. You cannot have them, especially if it's in mixed groups, mixed boys and girls. You have to give them some instructions. Say, don't write stuff like you have nice shoes, or that kind of stuff. It's like, you have a nice smile, or you make others feel good, or you show so much confidence, or you're whatever kind of trait that they have, and have everybody. The assignment is you have to go and write on everybody's back. You have to do everybody, because you don't want somebody to get missed and they only have 3 and everybody else have 9 or 10. That's going to defeat the whole purpose of the thing.
Yeah.
And then after it's done, everybody, and they don't sign it, so they don't know they supposedly don't know who wrote what. I mean, they'll be able to tell some of that. I mean, there's some of that going to be given. But then they'll have a sheet of paper that'll have a list of everything that these people have said that's positive about them. That everything that you're a great teammate, you're a great leader, all those types of things. That's another thing that they can put in their asset list and or victory list. Now they got, here's a list of things that people think I'm great at. Well, this is a victory for me because today they help me feel good about. And just that, I'm 53 years old, and I still have right over there on my shelf 2 copies of these things that I had done over 10 years ago that I put in a notebook, and I really didn't think about it at the time. And then a few years back, I was cleaning out that section of the office, and I found those sheets again. And instead of tossing them, I just sit there and read it. And, even someone at my age, it really invigorated me and really inspired me. So I've kept them as a thing to go through. If things don't go well, I can go and look at it.
No, that's beautiful. And you're kind of inspiring me to actually go back to when I was in grade school. We had our favorite substitute teacher, Dr. Hudson, rest in peace. But what he would do is he would tell a story about, there was 2 people in combat, and one of, his buddies, passed away in combat. And in his boot, he kept with him basically what was like a compliment sheet from his grade school that every single person in his class wrote kind things about him, and he brought it with him everywhere. And I just remember that story sticking with me. And every time he would come to our school, and he was everyone's favorite substitute teacher, number 1, because he showed movies. And number 2, also, I feel like probably was because we did this compliment, where we had to write everyone in class, like you're talking about, a compliment for everyone. And I think, maybe when you're young, you don't realize, you don't make the connection like, oh, I feel good when I'm being nice to other people and also receiving that. But now, like, I'm looking back and we're having this conversation, it really helps you kind of connect, number 1, obviously with a class, but also with a teacher, and build that trust and relationship, because you recognize some of the other things that are positive, right? Because again, as humans, we are designed to see what's wrong, right? Have negative thoughts, and being able to recognize what's positive because of what other people are saying about us is really powerful.
I agree with you. And you made me think too, is this activity is not just beneficial for the person who is receiving the sheet of paper. It's not just, but it's you don't just get the benefit from reading the sheet that has been written about you, but you also get the benefit by writing things about folks. Because when you're focusing on trying to find the positive in someone else, it kind of changes your mindset too and gets you in a positive energy. And so now you're feeling good because you've written all these things. I got a team of 15. You've wrote 14 things that are positive, and you're feeling really good because you've got a sheet of paper with 14 positive things about you. It's a win-win activity. Very simple, Right? And yes, let's be honest. Some of them are going to goof off. Some of them you're going to have to get a little guidance on it. I mean, come on. We're talking about developing brains here. They're not going to take every single thing you do with them serious. But I tell you what, it will be a positive experience overall.
Yeah, I'm curious, for me, because I struggle with sometimes with the freshmen and sophomores. They don't take a lot serious, just to be honest. But I'm curious, how many stories have people come back to you and talked about some of the exercises that you've done that maybe at the time they weren't taking it super serious, but years later they contacted you and like, hey, this really made an impact?
Well, on this particular exercise, it wasn't that they contacted later, but one of the guys who came through one of our first certification classes for youth, he was a 23-year-old at the time, and he was going out and speaking to youth groups, FCA groups across central Oklahoma. And he did this activity with some 8th graders. And he just had the same response that you and I just talked about. They were not taking it seriously. They were goofing around with it, especially when they got their sheets back and they were reading it. They were all kind of goofing off. But what he noticed the next day was that one of them, at the beginning of class, very discreetly unfolded the paper and was reading it again. And then just folded it up and put it back in his pocket. Now, did the kid come over to him and says, "Oh, Mr. B-Bomb, this has changed my life. Oh, this has really affected me, Brandon. You've changed everything. This activity." He never said anything to him. No. But Brandon, the person who did the activity, he noticed a change in the person's demeanor, a change in the person's attitude. Never acknowledged that he got it, and he was one of the ones who kind of played it off. It wasn't cool the day before. That's just kind of a defense mechanism. I don't want to look like this means something to me. That doesn't mean it doesn't. I don't want this to make it. It's not cool for me to make this activity show impact on me. It probably has. So he folded it up, kept it in his pocket. I don't know how long the kid took it. I don't know how long that little 8th grade boy kept that around with him. But the fact that he was still reading it a day later, to me, demonstrates the impact that it could have.
Absolutely. He could have totally just threw it in. If it really didn't mean anything to him, he would have put it in the trash. Right. But obviously, like when you're in 8th grade, right, you want to be cool, and it's not cool to, be out and, be super kind. They like to, kind of rag on each other and bring each other down. And, they're like, and it's, I'm trying to work with them on that. But I did notice, a seriousness when we went around and said, what are we proud of and what do we want to work on in the new year? There have not been that serious about something in a long time. So that tells me that it's connecting with them, right? Like I've talked about some of these things here and there. A lot of times I'll ask, what do we do well in practice? Crickets, right? What do we need to work on? Then the list goes on. So it's kind of, I feel like, and I'm sure you could testify to this, but for coaches and people working with youth, it's just that consistency of asking the same question. And sometimes it's repackaging it, right? But like if you just consistently have a similar message, like I feel like they eventually buy into it.
They will, and it'll click with them. And whether or not they will acknowledge it, they crave the kind of activities and benefits that these particular activities can do for them. They crave that. They crave the positive impact it has on them. Those affirmations for them. They need that. They desire that. And for that young man, I just pictured the fact that, hey, he's probably not told this a lot. And so even though there were, just 9 or 10 statements here, and some of them may have been kind of vague because, they're 8th graders for Pete's sakes. Yeah. It still was something that he could look at and say, well, there's 9 people who see something good in me. Even if it says, one of them says, "You're a cool kid." I don't know. Maybe that. What does that mean? That's vague. But to someone who's struggling, who's not having powerful, positive things going into them all the time, that can really make a difference for them. Now we're talking about impactful leadership again, because those every single one of them who wrote something was being an impactful leader.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've been trying to recognize as, as a leader of young leaders is recognizing when they're doing something right. I think that's the other thing that a lot of coaches do. The only time they have engagements during practice is when they're making corrections, right? And I know that I think Stephen Mackey, who I had on the podcast, he's great. He does a lot of character development curriculum with athletes. Is his model is model first what you want to see, teach when they don't act on it, whether it's the skill, whether it's the leadership, and reward and test, right? And we really want to reward the young athletes, the young leaders who are, making those positive gains, because that's how, you reinforce, okay, this behavior belongs in this culture.
I agree. And there's so many little things that we can do. And, you were talking, when you were talking just then about when you're meeting with your team and they're talking about things that are doing positive, I can see this activity of riding on their back being an early season after they've gotten to know each other a little bit activity. And then as they progress and they get more comfortable with each other, then it becomes a more open activity.
Right.
My wife led a young girls group for a number of years, and one of the things that they would do, this would be at the end of a year of being together before they would go on a big week-long tour together, where they would go out and sing and do different things. But when they were preparing for that, one of the activities that she would do is she would have one of them, get in the circle, and one of them would get in the middle, and everybody would have to say something positive on it. That's the same concept. You couldn't do that at the beginning of the season. You got to build trust. You got to build all that relationship. But at the end, or at the time that they've, gone through some struggles together and they've built a tighter relationship, then you can take that activity, that compliment sheet activity, to being a live compliment sheet activity. And then you want to see something powerful. Where do they have to look the person in the eye who's saying, I value you because of this. I value you because of this. This is what I value you the most about. That takes it to a whole different level then.
Yeah, and they're like you said, you can't do that right at the beginning of the season, and that's like an extra added layer of trust. And I almost imagine, like, if I was going to do that activity with my team, I couldn't do it in our typical court where they feel silly and goofy. I'd have to kind of remove them and put them in an environment where, maybe it's like the back of a room of a restaurant or even a classroom or something that is, a little bit different, because I feel like sometimes those environments really set those triggers in different ways. But
they'd have an overnight retreat where they would do a little bit more in-depth rehearsing and practicing for their tour. And during that, they would do different sessions on this. And this was one of them. And one particular year, they were doing it at our home. And so I was sitting in the other room listening to them. And, this is a bunch of high school girls. And they got emotional and they were crying and it was getting and then they started going, I love you. And one of them yelled out, there's just way too much estrogen in this ring for me. I need to go to the bathroom and take a break. But they trusted each other. And then when we went on tour, you could tell they were a tight group. They really wanted to do this together. They were all friends. And even though they came from very diverse backgrounds, very different family situations, different schools and stuff, because they had all come together, audition for this group, they were very, very tight as friends.
No, that's beautiful. And that's just like the power of having and doing these exercises and being vulnerable and connecting with one another. I think that's like, I'm a big believer in the culture element of teams and really wanting to play for each other. And as we kind of hit that, the fourth quarter, the last couple of minutes of our podcast, I'd love for you to share, do you have any certain stories that stick out with you from, your years of working as Generation Ziglar? And can you describe the feeling of like being proud of the development you've seen so many of, your young leaders go through your program?
Well, Justin, when I first started out, my thought was that I was going to be the person in front of the room doing the speaking and doing the leading, and I was going to continue going and speaking at camps and conferences and then being in front of big audiences of youth and and having them all excited. I remember when Twitter first rolled out, and I had just done the speaking engagement, and I knew that it was working really well. It was with a high school group. Several high schools had come together and brought their student leaders there. And afterwards, some of their student leaders came up and said, "Hey, Mr. McLam, you're trending on Twitter." And I was like, what does that mean? What does it mean to be trending locally on Twitter? I had no idea what they were doing. We're hashtagging you. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. But that was really cool. But what I've learned and what I have really realized is my calling is it's much better for me to equip someone else. It's much better for me to equip Brandon and Justin and Sarah and Elizabeth and Abby. Give them all these skills, give them all this content, give them all the support they need, give them everything I can so that they can go be the positive impact leader that they want to be in their community and their circles of influence, and encourage them and support them in their endeavors. And as a result, we have seen untold numbers being affected. There was one young lady who came through the first class. She was later in a position of leadership over a student organization that had almost 500,000 youth in it nationwide. And she at one time spoke to over 25,000 young people live at one time and had that impact. And that video of her doing that is still gaining views weekly on YouTube. So to be able to pour into someone like that and to be able to and to encourage them. Now, she had the skills, she had the talent. She might have gotten there on her own without us. But I love the fact that I had a small part in that journey. So that is the stories that I want to tell. It's their stories. It's their stories of being out there and being teachers in a classroom and watching their students become success. Of becoming professors at colleges now and watch them impact college students in a positive way, or as ministers, or whatever their leadership role is right now. That's the stories I want to continue to see, and that's what we're excited about now, of being able to also pour into adults as well through our adult youth life coaching program. So for adults to come in who want to be life coaches for youth. I am looking so much to be able to pour into people and see the impact that they're going to have.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You're literally living the bridging impact mission by equipping and just continuing to bridge that impact and have those professors, those attorneys, and everyone working and impacting the speaker, right? They're going and impacting others, and it's just continuing to bridge along. And I really
there's a teacher. There's a young girl who's starting her first job teaching this fall, and she's not more than 15 minutes away from where I live is where she's teaching at, maybe a little bit more. And so she's impacting 105 students per semester. So she'll get some new students at the end of January. So over 200 students that she will have a direct impact with. And I know, because I'm in regular contact with her, she's taken these things that we taught them, this curriculum we trained them on, and she's implementing in her class. In fact, we're learning how it works a little bit better from her. So she's, impacting us as well. But that's 205 students I would probably never in my life see. And yet now, based on what we're doing, they're being impacted. So that's what excites me, is that there's going to be untold numbers of youth that are affected positively that I'll never in my life know about. And that's so cool.
That's so cool. That's what it's all about. I love it. And what would your final words of advice be for the coaches and leaders of youth, who are listening be?
Well, I would really encourage them to seek out some kind of extra resources, assets, training, something that they can have in their toolbox so that they not only know the skills and the technical part of what they're doing, but they also can impact them as leaders, that they can teach them the skills, the life skills that they need in order to thrive in life. It's wonderful to teach guys how to hit a baseball. It's so much more wonderful to teach them how to live life when they do fail. That's what I love about baseball, because you learn that failure is just a part of what you do. I mean, the best baseball players now, only hit 1 out of 3. If you can connect 33% of the time in the pros, you're going to be a gazillionaire. If you can do it that often.
Right.
Which that means you're failing 2 out of 3 times. Yeah. And yet you'll be one of the highest paid players in the game right now if you can do that. I wonder what Aaron. Right. I'd have to look it up and see what Aaron Judge is for the Yankees. What his batting average is.
Yeah, right? It's not. I don't even know if it's 300.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
I mean, so that means that, at a game where he averages getting up 4 or 5 times, probably. If they're facing a good pitcher, he might be 4 times, 5 or 6 times on a bad night, on a bad pitching night for the other team. That means that, they're not expecting him to get more than a hit or 2 a night.
Exactly. A night. I know. Yeah, so being able to handle that failure, that's huge. And I really appreciate you, sharing your time, your wisdom, and the Generation Ziglar wisdom. Where can people find out more and connect with you and the Generation Ziglar mission?
Well, if right now, I really recommend for those adults, those who are coaching, those who are teachers, if they want to learn more about what we do, I want to encourage them to go to our youth coaching site. It's generation-youth.com. So generation-youth.com. And if they go to that site, they'll find out information about what we do. We'll have some resources available for them there. We'll have, they can see if they need to learn about programs. There'll also be a button there for them to schedule a call with me if they just want to learn more. No commitment involved. Just want to learn more. I love talking to people and just hearing what their story is, where they are in life, or what they want to do, and how we might be able to encourage them and maybe even equip them a little bit better to do it. So generation-youth.com is the best place for them to go right now.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today, James. I love the mission that you're on, and you're bridging so much impact. So we'll look forward to staying connected and as our missions align.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Justin.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast. We'd love it if you would like, subscribe, leave a comment and a review on whatever platform you're on. It's the best way to help us grow. We appreciate you for doing that. We'll shout you out on social media. I'd also love if you connected with me on social media. Let me know your thoughts. And this is why I do it. I want to share knowledge and wisdom from experienced leaders to people like yourself and myself, so we can have this dialogue and move forward, make an impact on the world. So stay tuned, stay subscribed. Cheers.